All right, everyone. So I guess we should just get into it. We were asked 4 questions and we were asked to go ahead and use our own thinking, analyzation, and opinion to go ahead and respond to them. So the first question that we were asked is, what do you think are the top 3 perceptual distortions that employees are most likely to be affected by when forming perceptions of a new manager? And defend your answer. Well, I would have to go with the halo effect, I would have to go with stereotyping, and I would have to go with selective perception. I say the halo effect because honestly, it's just judging somebody based off of your first impression. And it is something that we do a lot. Stereotyping, also something that we do a lot, where you go ahead and just judge somebody based off their age or what they look like. You know, this guy must be too old to do this. There's no way. This person's too young. It's impossible for them to understand this. And the selective perception, which is when basically you're sticking with your first impression. It doesn't matter if you liked the person at first and they're terrible. They end up being terrible. But what happens is, because you like them at first, you're gonna overlook everything that's horrible that they're doing and focus on the good stuff they're doing. And vice versa. If you thought they were horrible at first and they turn out to be the best person ever, the best manager ever, you're still gonna overlook that because you're gonna go ahead and say, I don't see anything good about this person. I'm gonna focus on the worst parts about them and just forget that there's anything good. And in management, when you're judging new management, this is exactly how it works in the workplace, the same way it works in reality. For example, personally, when I entered the vision care program, I had 2 professors that we were introduced to. Now, one of them was middle-aged, but he was relatable, he was funny, he was calm, you know, what you can call chill. And we thought he was gonna be awesome. Then we had another professor who was way older than even this middle-aged guy. He was very strict, very grumpy, you would think. And you just thought he had a habit of locking kids out of his class even. If you were late, you weren't getting in. So I'm just like, this guy's gonna be the worst. Well, the opposite turned out to be true. And literally what ended up being the case is the professor who I initially thought would be absolutely amazing, completely relatable, fun class, is the class that I was half asleep in most of the time. And the professor, which I initially thought was just Oscar the Grouch kind of person, and how could you really lock students out of your classroom? Like, okay, people are late, so what? Well, it turns out his class is the one that I was most engaged in. He kept my attention. And he's also the one that I feel I learned the most from. And if you think back at it, his way of teaching actually kind of drilled all the information into your head. And his whole thing of locking students out of the classroom, he was preparing us for the business world. You can't be late to work. You just can't. This is not something that's good. It's not something that's praised. So everything that he taught us to this day, I remember the majority, 75% of the things that this man taught us all these years ago versus the 15% I may remember from the class I was always half asleep in, which is the professor who I initially thought would be absolutely amazing. So my halo effect, my stereotyping, and thank God I didn't have selective perception in this case, I judged a book by its cover, and I was wrong. So now our second question was, describe what you could do in a difficult work situation to protect yourself from falling prey to fundamental attribution error. Well, fundamental attribution error is when we judge someone without even knowing what's really going on with them. We didn't even get to know anything about them. We're just saying, this person must be horrible because what are they doing? So what I would have to do is slow down, take my time, and give people a chance, because you don't know what somebody is going through. You're judging them based off of what you see. You see, okay, this employee really just missed a deadline? Are you kidding me? After I just worked myself crazy to make this deadline? This person doesn't show up to work on time? This person missed all these days? Why are they here? They're not worth it. They must be terrible. And we don't know the backstory. So somebody could really be going through something and we have no idea, but we're just judging them because what we see is lack of effort. For example, I actually have a friend, and to this day we're very close, and I feel terrible about this, but my friend was an amazing father. I mean, every time I was over there, his daughter was there. She would be laughing and playing and daddy, and oh my gosh, like, she was the cutest thing ever. And one day I started going over there and she was gone. I never saw this little girl again. Mind you, this is a little girl I have seen so many times. Every time I went over there, he was such a loving father. He was so giving. He loved his daughter, or so I thought. And what ended up happening is when his daughter did stop coming through, what I did was I started judging my friend. I took my initial perception of him, knowing him as long as I've known him, I still decided to go ahead and say, you know what? He must be a deadbeat because he just abandoned his daughter. He's not even looking to take care of her. Where is she? You're just gonna stop being a father out of nowhere? How dare you? And I didn't know what was really going on. What was really going on in the background is that the mother to his child was actually being very bitter and keeping him away from his child. And they were battling it out in court, and he would be crying in private because what he wants is custody of his daughter, or at least joint custody, but she's not letting him see her at all. So, I learned all of this because the emotions started seeping through. He was miserable. Every time I would talk about my child or anything like that, you could see it in his face. He misses his daughter. And to this day, he's really fighting so hard to get his daughter, who actually would prefer to be with him. She said so herself. So I feel terrible because what I did was I started judging him. I let that go ahead and jumble my opinion of my own friend. So, wow, I feel terrible. But that's what we do as humans. And these are things that we need to work on. So our next question was, praise can be a type of positive reinforcement used by managers. List at least 3 additional positive reinforcements that are used in the workplace. And of the reinforcements you list, which do you find most personally motivating and why? Well, I went ahead and I chose bonuses, promotions, and flexible schedules. I know a lot of people are probably thinking more about money and recognition and whatnot, but I'll go ahead and say that a promotion brings all of that. And in the workplace, yes, we want to be recognized. Yes, we want more money. Yes, we want all of these things, and we want to be able to get along with our coworkers. But all of that kind of ties in. You get a promotion, and that brings it all together. That shows the recognition, that comes with the money. You got what you wanted, right? And you've got a higher position in the company. So, for example, personally, years ago, a long time ago, I used to work for Walmart as a regular employee. And I did have a department that I was more focused on, which was the toy department. And you know, normally when we've all experienced it, when you go into a place and you ask somebody where something is, they'll just brush you off like, oh, this isn't my department, I don't know. Like, so why do you work there? Or at least be kinder. So for me, the way it happened was I kind of familiarized myself with different departments. Not that I knew everything, but I knew some. And when a customer would come up to me in the toy department and ask me about something that's in houseware or a grocery that they're looking for or anything, I would go ahead and I didn't ignore them and brush them off and just say, oh my gosh, you know what? This isn't my department, so go somewhere else. I don't know what to tell you. You see me standing here in toys. What I would do is I would actually go ahead, not ignore them, not brush them off. What I would do is I would try to help them if I could. And if I could not help them, I would at least try to help direct them in the right direction of somebody who could. You can't just brush people off. It's not going to get you what you want. And in the end, what that got me was a promotion. I was promoted to actually being the manager of the toy department. And that just made me want to work even harder. And again, like I said, I would say promotion because the promotion is showing you the recognition that we're all looking for. It gives you the money that we all want. And a higher position in the company, which shows you that you can level up. So you're now a manager. Maybe you can get an even higher position than just management. And I really appreciated that. It really showed me a lot. It really improved my work ethic even more. And it made me happy to work there. So the last question that I was asked, and this one, you join a company where managers regularly reprimand their direct reports in front of others. They play favorites and encourage coworkers to report one another for making small mistakes. Based on Bandura's social cognitive theory, what sort of company culture is likely to spring from these practices? And how would a new employee seek to get ahead at such a company? To what extent would efforts to succeed in this culture directly benefit the company's shareholders? Well, this stuff leads to being fear-based, competitive. It can be unreliable. You don't want to work in a team setting anymore. When somebody will first go ahead and enter a company, here comes all the judgment, right? But Bandura's theory tells us that we learn by watching others and we see how they earn their rewards and we see how they earn their downfalls and whatnot. So we go ahead and we try to follow those things. And when you go ahead and you try to do these things and you find that there is favoritism, you find that people are just telling on each other, oh, they made this mistake and you made that mistake and you suck at this and why do you get all the people? You're just watching this battle every day and it doesn't really make you want to do much yourself. Honestly, in a company, I think that would be its downfall. So, for example, I worked, I believe I told you guys before, for a company called America's Best as an optician. And I entered the company as the youngest person there. Everybody was at least twice my age or more. I was judged immediately for being so young, entering this company and this business with the title that I had. They didn't think I was capable of doing anything. How could I possibly be an optician at my age? And a lot of them didn't have the same certifications that I did. But it seemed like it didn't matter because what ended up happening is I immediately saw all the favoritism on the planet. There was this co-worker I had, her name was Meredith. And Meredith was just a sales associate. So she wasn't running around in every single section doing everything, which is pretty much what I was doing. I was doing sales, I was going ahead and fixing glasses, I was doing all the pre-testing, I did everything, okay? And I even got all the customers that spoke different languages because nobody understood Spanish, nobody else understood Creole, and so that was all me. And what would happen is that the optometrist, when he would come out with these customers, these clients, he would give them all to Meredith. She was the first one. It was like first come, first serve, but only Meredith. And the only way that we would get customers ourselves to have sales with was we would basically get Meredith's scraps. If she was busy, then we would go ahead and handle that one. And how are we going to get any sales? That's where our bonuses come from, right? So Meredith was always the one to get the first call. And if she didn't want that client, she might hand it over to you. But what ended up happening is, no matter how hard I seemed I worked, I got none of the recognition. I even brought it up to the manager that there was a lot of favoritism in there, that I was being ousted and everything. And you know what? He dismissed it. It wasn't very important to him, which shows his lack of leadership skills. And so it continued the same way, on and on. And that made everybody else really stop caring. Why am I working so hard just for her to get all the recognition, for her to get all the favoritism? At the end of the month, when it would be the records of what everybody did for the month, how much money they made for the store, whatever the case may be, Meredith got all the praise, all the recognition. Of course she had the most sales. She got the most people. And forget everything that everybody else contributed. Forget the fact that I ran around like a chicken with my head cut off. Meredith was just the best. She was absolutely amazing. Well, that didn't make me want to stay there anymore. It didn't make anybody want to work as a team. It didn't make anybody trust each other. It became a competitive atmosphere. And then honestly, the competition just ended because nobody cared anymore. You want to give everything to Meredith? Go on ahead. But you know what? The customers started to see how everybody was not getting along, how people were just like brushing everything off, and what happens next is people stop coming in and everything starts to kind of fall apart. So what are the stockholders really going to get if we're not doing our part, right? Go ahead, Meredith, take over. Have fun. Have at it. Matter of fact, go ahead and take all the customers that you can't speak to either, and go ahead and do all the testing that you don't know how to do, and continue being the favorite and getting all the recognition when everybody's doing more than you are around here. So to me, that's how everything kind of comes together. These things all come together in a way where you have to learn that we can't just be judging people off of their first impressions. We can't just go ahead and assume that somebody is terrible or that somebody is amazing. We can't just ignore the good or the bad. We can't just go ahead and decide what somebody is without even knowing who the person really is. We can't go ahead and ignore giving recognition to our employees that deserve it. Nobody is going to want to work hard if they're not being recognized. And we can't go ahead and just play favorites either, because you're going to lose the best employees that you have by giving everything and all the recognition to somebody who is doing less than the rest of us. Why are we here? So this is just how I see it. I don't know how everybody else sees it, but from the questions that we were asked, my opinion is what I just expressed here. And I can't wait to see what everybody else has to say. I get really nervous in videos, so, you know, I did my best.